Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And these days, it feels like every major movie studio is trying to create their own cinematic universe. And honestly, who can blame them? Marvel and Disney have made billions at the box office and millions more in merchandising. Having a successful cinematic universe beloved by fans and critics alike, it's the ultimate money machine in entertainment. What company wouldn't want that? The problem is it's just incredibly difficult to create and even more difficult to sustain, so much so that no one else has even come close to Marvel's success. DC and Warner Bros. Have certainly tried, and while they've certainly had their moments, they're not nearly as robust as Marvel. And the less said about the defunct Dark Universe, the better. But that won't stop other studios from trying. And while not every franchise is capable of becoming a full-fledged cinematic universe, some are in a better position than others. This brings me to Power Rangers, a franchise with a special place in the hearts of many 90s kids. It also happens to be a franchise in flux at the moment. Now personally, I really enjoyed the 2017 movie by Dean Israelite, which basically reimagined the Power Rangers in a more mature, updated setting. But I also understand why it didn't take off. It certainly had the potential, it just wasn't realized. If nothing else, that movie helped raise the profile of the franchise once more. It also helps that Boom Studios has been churning out amazing Power Rangers comics in recent years. I've referenced them before, and I still highly recommend them to all Power Rangers fans, young and old alike. This collective effort might not have been enough to get a sequel to the 2017 movie, but it still worked well enough to warrant another attempt. And that attempt is already taking shape. As of this recording, a full-fledged Power Rangers cinematic universe is in the works for Netflix, this time under filmmaker Jonathan Entwistle. We still don't know too much about what form it'll take, who will be cast, and how they'll go about building this franchise. We just know it won't have any connection to the 2017 movie. And given the lackluster box office of that movie, there's still a lot working against Power Rangers at the moment. But I'm still rooting for it to succeed, and not just because my inner 90s kid wants it. I genuinely believe that Power Rangers has what it takes to become a successful all-around franchise. But in the interest of speculating or just daring to dream, here are my hopes and concerns about the prospects of a Power Rangers cinematic universe. To date, there have been over 24 iterations of the Power Rangers TV show and 3 Power Rangers movies. Now, in terms of the movies, they've all had varying degrees of success, relatively speaking. But none of them effectively took Hollywood by storm. The first 2 movies, Mighty Morphin and Turbo, were basically extensions of the TV shows. They just took the same actors, gave the producers a bigger budget, and told a story that followed the same formula as the show. They were still fun in their own right, but let's be honest, they didn't really break new ground. It didn't get that many people excited about the future of Power Rangers movies. Now, the 2017 reboot tried to be more ambitious, and I think they took the right approach for the most part. They started from the beginning, establishing who Zordon and Rita Repulsa were, and introducing new versions of Jason, Trini, Zack, Kimberly, and Billy. They also didn't rush straight into Zord battles and putty fights. They effectively built up the characters to a point where they earned their status as Power Rangers. And I thought that was great. I enjoyed that process for the most part. But, and this is where the movie fell short, it just didn't fit the tone and spirit of Power Rangers. At times, it was just too serious and dark. That's understandable if you're trying to make these characters feel real, so to speak. It was just done in a way that didn't convey the same tone of the show. It's the most important component of any cinematic universe, having that distinct tone that transcends any one movie or TV series. You can sense it in Marvel movies because they have a very specific tone, and you can feel that tone from movie to movie, even when the characters change. The first Iron Man movie established it. All future Marvel movies have built upon it. And that's exactly what I think Power Rangers needs to do. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be goofy or cartoonish like the old 90s show. It just has to retain that same spirit. And the comics do a great job of this. They do get quite serious at times, but they never abandon that distinct Ranger-esque tone. And that means embracing many of the same aesthetics. In the same way Robert Downey Jr. really looks the part of Iron Man, Jason, Trini, Zach, Billy, and Kimberly should do the same. The cast of the 2017 movie did a commendable job, but they never felt like the same characters from the show or the comics. And if a new movie or Netflix series opts for a different approach with entirely new characters, well, that can work too, but at the very least, it should still acknowledge the iconic past of this franchise. That's what resonates with long-term fans. And that'll be key towards building a strong foundation for this franchise moving forward. As I've noted before, the recent Power Rangers comics from Boom Studios have been incredible. They've effectively rekindled my love for Power Rangers. Now, I admit, I basically ditched the franchise after they went into space. That was my jumping off point. I know the series has continued in various forms since then, often with a new cast, new themes, and new Zords. And every now and then, a classic character will still show up, like Jason David Frank. But for the most part, that really didn't interest me. But the Power Rangers comics went back to basics. It wasn't just that they focused on the original cast of Jason, Tommy, Billy, Zach, Trini, and Kimberly. These comics effectively took the foundation that the 90s show laid and built on it. But they didn't try too hard to mirror every single element. The comics actually dared to be a bit more mature. We learned a lot more about these characters when they're not fighting putties or giant monsters. We realize they're still teenagers with plenty of issues. And being a Ranger comes with many burdens that compound those issues. That approach offered a whole new dimension to these beloved characters. Suddenly, it felt like they weren't restricted to a 30 minutes kids show or recycled Zord footage. We could actually explore these characters and their world in greater detail. And the comics just didn't stick to the original cast. It quickly branched out, tying stories into other characters from multiple eras, from Ninja Storm to Lost Galaxy. That, in my opinion, is the key to making a Power Ranger cinematic universe viable. You can't just start with the classic Power Rangers cast. It has to embrace the totality of everything that the Rangers have become over the past 3 decades. The villains, the Zords, the more cosmic elements of Ranger lore. It needs to tap into all of it. Use it to weave a larger web that future stories can explore. And since Power Rangers has been around for nearly 30 years, there's a lot to explore. There's also plenty of room to innovate. The comics have certainly done that. There are also elements from the comics that significantly diverge from the events of the show. But in doing so, it never feels less like Power Rangers. It's always building towards something greater. And that's what every successful cinematic universe has to do. If there's one thing Power Rangers has often struggled with, going all the way back to the 90s show, it's world building. Now, that's to be expected to some extent. It's a kid's show after all. There's really only so much you can do within those limitations. But over the years, there have been some noteworthy efforts. The most notable is how multiple generations of Rangers get their powers. They all tap into something called the morphing grid, this field of connecting cosmic energy that imbues them with their powers. Now, the nature and mechanisms of the grid are a bit ambiguous. At times, it basically feels no different than the Force from Star Wars, this ever-present cosmic energy that only a select few can tap into. The comics and the recent TV shows have expanded on it a little. Even the 2017 movie referenced it a few times. But it never got refined to the same level as the Force or even the Infinity Stones. To date, the most ambitious attempt to explore the morphing grid happened in the comics, most notably with the big crossover event, Shattered Grid, but only to the point that it created greater conflict. And that's where a new movie or Netflix series could really set itself apart. It could finally give the morphing grid and the basic workings of being a Power Ranger the development it deserves. Because unless you're a hardcore fan, you probably don't know much about the grid. You just know it gives the Rangers their fancy costumes and Zords. But what else can it do? How does it work? What are its limits? How is it accessed? And how does it go about choosing Rangers? The 2017 movie answered some of these questions, but barely. It felt less like a true plot device and more like a glorified MacGuffin. Given how this thing, the Morphin Grid, is what connects every generation of Power Rangers, it has to do more than that. And beyond that kind of world building, there's also the greater cosmic aspect of Power Rangers. It has alien races and alien planets like Aquitar, Eltar, and KO-35. There's magic to go along with the monsters. There are vast histories behind certain characters, and conflicts that span entire galaxies. And any future movie or series could use that, but it needs to be more than just some unseen force guiding the plot. There has to be agency and depth behind each character, be they the allies they make or the villains they fight. In principle, a cinematic universe has things that bind it together. That's how Marvel and Star Wars have managed to make so many movies but maintain a cohesive narrative. I believe Power Rangers can do that too. It's just a matter of putting in the time and effort, as well as daring to be bolder with the world building. When Iron Man first debuted in 2008, it was not billed as the start of a cinematic universe. It was presented as a simple, concise Iron Man movie. Its goal wasn't to create the MCU, it was just to tell a good story about Iron Man, one that captured the spirit and essence of the character. And it succeeded. Even though it effectively planted the seeds for a larger cinematic universe, that was never the primary focus. This is where other would-be cinematic universes often fail. Both the DCEU and the Dark Universe tried so hard to set up sequels that they forgot to make one good movie that stood on its own. And that is not a trivial oversight. And it's a mistake that the Power Rangers should learn from. Now, the 2017 movie did succeed in avoiding that pitfall. Yes, it did tease a sequel, but not until the very end with a post-credit scene, just like Iron Man. And while the movie had plenty of other flaws, that wasn't one of them. It still tried to be a good quality Power Rangers movie that stood on its own. And if the next movie or Netflix series is going to take anything away from its predecessor, that should be it. Because before any franchise can become a cinematic universe, it has to lay a solid foundation. That foundation has to be compelling, engaging, and true to the source material. It can't just rely on 90s nostalgia or fancy spectacles. It has to be a genuinely good experience for everyone, and not just hardcore Power Rangers fans. Now, the first two Power Rangers movies were, by and large, pure fan service. If you weren't a Power Rangers fan going in, chances are you wouldn't be one when you left. They were just extensions of the TV show, and that just isn't enough to build a full-fledged cinematic universe. A thriving Power Rangers franchise has to have a solid foundation to build on in whatever form it takes, be it a movie or a TV series. That means the characters, plot, and aesthetics work in conjunction to create a quality experience. It may sound easy, but it's not. I know it's tempting to point to Marvel, but again, Marvel is the exception, not the norm. And everyone involved in Power Rangers would be wise to understand that. The temptation will be there, as will the resources. Paramount Studios has shown that they are willing to spend big for a major franchise. They did it with Transformers. They also found some much-needed success with Sonic the Hedgehog. There's no doubt there will be pressure for Power Rangers to be their version of the MCU. But they have to resist jumping the gun. And this is where some of my greatest concerns come into play. Because again, I want Power Rangers to succeed. But I also think it has some major obstacles to overcome. More so than most. Let's face it, a Power Rangers cinematic universe has a lot working against it. Never mind the fact that translating kids' TV shows into a series of movies or a streaming show does not have a good track record. This is such a unique franchise with such a distinct appeal. Capturing that in one movie or even a single TV series is challenging enough. And like I said earlier, the greatest mistakes Power Rangers could make is getting ahead of itself. If the powers that be try too hard to set up sequels and crossovers, then the franchise will struggle to stand on its own. A big part of what makes the DCEU so divisive is that it's just so erratic. It has a unique tone and style, but the quality of the movies is rarely the same. However, they happen to have the luxury of using iconic characters like Superman and Batman. Power Rangers may be a big deal to many, many fans, but they're not on that level. Their margin for error is small, but Power Rangers only needs to succeed once to create a foundation. From there, so many other possibilities can emerge. Now, it's still not clear what form it'll take. Should it start with the classic lineup from the first '90s show? Or should it take a new approach but with familiar characters? And just how much do you reinvent those characters? That's another concern. And that's part of why I think the 2017 movie didn't work. I get the need to reinvent the characters for a new audience, but I think that movie reinvented them a bit too much. I think Billy's character certainly worked. He was still nerdy and lovable like his TV counterpart. Zordon and Alpha may have looked very different, but they were still very true to the source material. As for Jason, Trini, Zach, and Kimberly, well, that's where that movie fell short. They just never felt like the same characters that fans know and love. They just happen to have the same name. And let's not forget, these characters are iconic and beloved in their own right. The things that have endeared them to audiences for years just can't be reinvented. They can certainly change in terms of looks and style, but if Tommy Oliver doesn't feel like Tommy Oliver, then it's just not going to work. And ultimately, if the final product doesn't feel like the Power Rangers we know and love, then fans aren't going to be eager to follow this new cinematic universe. I certainly hope that everyone involved can learn from past missteps. I also hope they've taken note of why other cinematic universes have failed to take off. But in the end, we won't know how much or how little a Power Rangers universe can succeed until we see a finished movie or show. Personally, I'm excited. But I'm also somewhat skeptical. It could be either really good, really bad, or really divisive. We'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot that goes into making a successful cinematic universe. It's hard, but not impossible. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is proof enough of that. And one success often inspires another. While to date, no one has come close to succeeding at the same level as Marvel, I still believe Power Rangers has what it takes. It has 30 years of lore to draw from, as well as a sizable group of hardcore fans who will gladly cheer it on if it succeeds. But it cannot take the same path that Marvel did. It must chart its own path to success. And should it succeed, it'll take this beloved franchise to a whole new level. Because it really wasn't that long ago that Marvel was only about comics and toys. And at one point, superhero movies weren't seen as viable movie franchises. Now, that did eventually change, but it didn't happen overnight. At its core, Power Rangers is the ultimate power trip for those who dream about saving the world. It takes teenagers with attitude, young people who still see the world through idyllic eyes, and imbues them with power. And they are tasked with using that power to stop big, monstrous threats that no ordinary person could hope to confront. And yet they rise to the challenge. That's powerful. That's endearing. That's a feeling I think we've all come to appreciate a lot more in recent years. Feeling powerless in the face of such daunting challenges, it's enough to make us feel like we can't be stronger. Sometimes we need outside help. We need to be part of a team to achieve greatness. As kids, Power Rangers reminded us how ordinary people can wield great power to do good. Many of those kids are adults now. Jaded, cynical adults who've lost the attitude that dared them to think they could save the world. But they still latch on to that story. They still seek to overcome daunting challenges. For that reason and so many others, the time is right for Power Rangers to succeed beyond the bounds of a beloved 90s TV show. I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for any future developments. I'm hopeful, but cautious. If nothing else, the world needs more giant robots fighting giant monsters. There will always be entertainment value in that. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, stay safe, and may the power protect you.